For Mr. Stewart, you have stated in previous forums that the projected budget deficit for the next fiscal year could be $10 million. City officials in previous hearings mentioned the same figure. If you are elected, you have about 3 months to prepare, balance, and submit to the council your next budget. Given your own projections, millions of dollars in cuts would be mandated. What would you consider cutting?
I think the question is a broader question than specifically what you will cut, but how we start to streamline. And there's some things that we can do to streamline budgets and squeeze out every single penny. Before we even get into the part about investing and being more pro-business and being a better partner with the state to grow the economy. So what do we do right away to make sure that we can look at our budget in a wiser way and a more cost-effective way? First of all, we institute zero-based budgeting versus the incremental kind of budgeting that we have here in the city, and most organizations have it. The big distinction is, with zero-based budgeting, well, this is how it typically works. You go from year to year, you make assumptions that what was already in the budget was reasonable, and you look at the increases in the budget, and you sort of wrangle over that. Zero-based budgeting essentially says that start every budget cycle, we go back and make certain that what was previously in the budget is useful, because obviously things change. That kind of budgeting takes you from a 1 to 10% cost reduction. I'm not expecting a 10% cost reduction or $30 million, but I'm certainly, if we get even 1% out of that approach, we're talking $3 million. City Staff, which is an incredible program in cities across the country, is a way where top managers in your city have real-time information to better appropriate resources in your city. Like cities have instituted this program in their municipalities. I'm looking here at, for example, St. Louis has a budget of $410 million. Ours is $300 million. With this program, they save $5 million a year by better management. We have Atlanta reduced some of their expenses by 65% because they're better managing resources. Baltimore saved $13.2 million, $6 million in overtime because they're better allocated resources. These are reports coming out of these cities about city staff. The cost of implementing that program is $20,000. So again, we need a mayor who can go out, look at best practices, pull in the best resources, and lead in this century, not in the past century.
That's fine, Mr. Stewart. Thank you. Mr. Harrington.
Yeah, I'm not going to discuss where I would cut in the budget because I don't think it's fair to people that work for the city. We don't know exactly what the situation is going to be next year. We don't know what the state aid is going to be. We can only hope that they'll help us out where they haven't over the last few years. But the stark reality is that you can dance all you want, Mr. Stewart. But as Mr. Davis just mentioned to you, in 3 months, less than that, after taking office, you're going to have to make these decisions. You can't say you're going to go to St. Louis and ask them how they did it. It's too late. This is something you're going to have to do now. I can guarantee you one thing. That I will do is the same as I've done in the past, is I will take the information that's provided to me, I will decide what needs to be done to balance the budget, and I will balance the budget no matter what it takes to do that. Now let me tell you one other thing. There's another partner in this, and that's the national bond companies that write all our bonds. You not only have to cut the budget and balance the budget, you also have to satisfy them that you're doing the right things. We were able to convince them over these past 2 budget cycles to keep our bond rating the same, even though we had the deficits and the cuts that we made. So if they would hear you to say that you were going to look at all these new programs and go to zero-based budget and all that, I'm not sure it's something that they're going to buy into when you only have a short period of time to get this done. Maybe later on you could look at some of those things. But quite frankly, we cut 5% from everybody's ordinary maintenance budget this year. You're talking about cutting 3%. We've already made all those cuts. They're at bare bones. We have people that are, we have 16 firefighters we're down because we can't replace those. We can't put those people back in the jobs. So before you talk about adding more dollars to the budget, you need to take a reality check. This is not a fun and games. This is not a campaign. This is real time. Make decisions. And you don't have any experience doing it. And from what I hear you saying here tonight, you're not ready to decide what you would do. You're not ready to tell the people what you would do in those situations.
Well, that's time.
Concrete ideas from the mayor either. And I can tell you, he constantly talks about it's too late. that we're in a bind, that perhaps if we started today, we can solve the problem 2 years ago. My question is, where were you, Mr. Harrington, 18 years ago? So that we're not in the do is look at some things that we are take advantage of. Are we investing our monies that comes into the city more the best way possible? So with the $300 million budget, how much of that money can be placed in investment funds that give a better return? I would look at, for example, smarter tax policy. I mean, I think the governor has presented some good ideas. He campaigned on making sure we lower property taxes. He has the Municipal Partnership Act, which I actually think is a very good act. I would advocate for that change in the laws as mayor to give cities more flexibility in raising funds. What he's proposing, which I think, again, it's a great option for Brockton. It's a tax policy. You can place a meal tax of 1 to 2%. I go to McDonald's, I buy 2 value meals, I pay 10 cents. Some of those tax policies can generate about $2 million a year. By the way, which is far more than the $1.1 million a year the mayor was pushing for this power plant in our city.
Let me just, when Mr. Stewart asked where I was, just so, I know you weren't here, so you don't know what went on, but what actually happened, and you can speak to any of the unions or any of the state representatives, and they can tell you, what happened is the state took from us over $60 million in the last 5 years, money that we were entitled to. There were lottery monies they didn't give us. It was money for mandated transportation that they owed us that they didn't give us. And that had accumulated over 5 years, $60 million. If we had that $60 million, we wouldn't have any deficits. So I was there and I was fighting to get those dollars. But unfortunately, the state, when they had their cutback, they decided to take the money away from the city and towns and not make the necessary cuts that they had to make.
So if that's the case then, Mr. Harrington, why are we in a position where, for example, as I mentioned in the last debate, there was an opportunity for the city to receive $10 million in infrastructure improvement grants from the state, and you sort of dismissed it as sort of, well, we didn't get it, I'm not really certain why. I think that's an enormous amount of money for a city to not take advantage of. But what's even more interesting is that the top executive has no idea why we didn't receive the money. It had no sort of review process and held anyone accountable as to why we didn't receive those funds. I think that's almost, it strikes a neglect. And so my question is, if times are tough, who do you go with? A person who's focused only on cutting, or someone who's going to go out there, pound the pavement, make sure that we take advantage of every single possible resources out there? There really are only 2 options. Either you cut to the bare bones and put everyone at risk, or you go out there and you make things happen. And this mayor has made very little happen over the last 2 years. Last comment on this topic.
Just to tell you that I assume the grant he's talking about is the jobs grant. He's never clear on what he's talking about. But that's a grant that some communities got some money. But one of the requirements of that grant was that you had to have a project on the table that was going to guarantee at least 100 jobs, and you were going to have to do at least 50% of your business would have to come from out of the state. And that was the requirement of that grant. We didn't qualify for that grant, so we didn't apply for it. But in the same time, we got $60 million for 2 new schools. We got $1.7 million to redo the Manning Pool. We got $6 million to redo the circulation in the downtown. We got $2 million from the federal government for the streetscape downtown. We just recently got $249,000 to build a brand new soccer stadium on the east side, a soccer field on the east side. We just received monies from another $150,000 that was just announced this week by the House of Representatives to get. So we're getting money in on a regular basis. You're not going to get everyone, but I'll tell you what we do is we apply for every single grant that we qualify for. And when I'm elected mayor on November 6th, we will continue to do that.